Hi, I'm Toni Land, and welcome back to the reading of Project 2025. Now, I've had several people ask me, why are you reading this book? And so I will tell you, for me, it goes back to my people being destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. And so I believe it's up to us, including me, to go out and get knowledge. And oftentimes that knowledge is out there, even through books that we haven't taken advantage of and that we haven't read. So I decided I was going to read Project 2025 so I could get more knowledge and have more wisdom. And so I'm inviting others on that journey with me. So I won't be offering commentary. I won't be offering my opinions, my comments, my interpretation. I am truly reading the book word for word so that you have an opportunity to grow in your knowledge and use that knowledge to not be destroyed. So thank you for joining me on this journey. In our first session, we started in on the foreword. And one of the things identified that we will go into today are the 4 promises. Promise 1 being to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Promise 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Promise 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And Promise 4, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. So today, we're going to get started right in on Promise 1. Promise 1, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. The next conservative president must get to work pursuing the true priority of politics, the well-being of the American family. In many ways, the entire point of centralizing political power is to subvert the family. Its purpose is to replace people's natural loves and loyalties with unnatural ones. You see this in the popular left-wing aphorism, government is simply the name we give to the things we choose to do together. But in real life, most of the things people do together have nothing to do with government. These are the mediating institutions that serve as the building blocks of any healthy society. Marriage, family, work, church, school, volunteering. The name real people give to the things we do together is community, not government. Our lives are full of interwoven, overlapping communities, and our individual and collective happiness depends upon them. But the most important community in each of our lives and the life of the nation is the family. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of Black children. There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. Fatherlessness is one of the principal sources of American poverty, crime, mental illness, teen suicide, substance abuse, rejection of the church, and high school dropouts. So many of the problems government programs are designed to solve but can't are ultimately problems created by the crisis of marriage and the family. The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where most children grow up without their married parents. If current trends continue, we are heading towards social implosion. Furthermore, the next conservative president must understand that using government alone to respond to symptoms of the family crisis is a dead end. Federal power must instead be wielded to reverse the crisis and rescue America's kids from the familiar breakdown. The conservative promise includes dozens of specific policies to accomplish this existential task. Some are obvious and long-standing goals, like eliminating marriage penalties in federal welfare programs and tax code, and installing work requirements for food stamps. But we must go further. It's time for policymakers to elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion as their top priority, and even use government power, including through tax code, to restore the American family. Today, the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent. The next conservative president must make the institutions of the American civil society hard targets for the woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, SOGI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exist. Pornography, manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for instance, is not a political Gordian knot inextricably binding up desperate claims about free speech, property rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. It has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders. And telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. In our schools, the question of parental authority over their children's education is a simple one. Schools serve parents, not the other way around. That is, of course, the best argument for universal school choice, a goal all conservatives and conservative presidents must pursue. But even before we achieve that long-term goal, parents' rights as their children's primary educators should be non-negotiable in American schools. States, cities, and counties, school boards, union bosses, principals, and teachers who disagree should be immediately cut off from federal funds. The noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curricula in every public school in the country. These theories poison our children, who are being taught on the one hand to affirm that the color of their skin fundamentally determines their identity and even their moral status, while on the other hand, they are taught to deny the very creatureliness that inheres in being human and consists in accepting the givenness of our nature as men or women. Allowing parents or physicians to reassign the sex of a minor is child abuse and must end. For public institutions to use taxpayer dollars to declare the superiority or inferiority of certain races, sexes, and religions is a violation of the Constitution and civil rights law and cannot be tolerated by any government anywhere in the country. But the pro-family promises expressed in this book and central to the next conservative president's agenda must go further than the traditional narrow definition of family issues. Every threat to the family stability must be confronted. This resolve should color each of our policies. Consider our approach to big tech. The worst of these companies prey on children like drug dealers to get them addicted to their mobile apps. Many Silicon Valley executives famously don't let their own kids have smartphones. Nevertheless, they make billions of dollars addicting other people's children to theirs. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms are specifically designed to create a digital dependency that fuels mental illness and anxiety to fray children's bonds with their parents and siblings. Federal policy cannot allow this industrial scale child abuse to continue. Finally, conservatives should gratefully celebrate the greatest pro-family win in a generation, overturning Roe v. Wade, a decision that for 5 decades made a mockery of our Constitution and facilitated the deaths of tens of millions of unborn children. But the Dobbs decision is just the beginning. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including in the next conservative administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. In particular, the next conservative president should work with Congress to enact the most robust protections for the unborn that Congress will support while deploying existing federal powers to protect innocent life and vigorously complying with statutory bans on the federal funding of abortion. Conservatives should ardently pursue the pro-life and pro-family policies while recognizing the many women who find themselves in immensely difficult and often tragic situations and the heroism of every choice to become a mother. Alternative options to abortion, especially adoption, should receive federal and state support. In summary, the next president has a moral responsibility to lead the nation in restoring a culture of life in America again, dismantle the administrative state, and return self-governance to the American people. Of course, the surest way to put the federal government back to work for the American people is to reduce its size and scope back to something resembling the original constitutional intent. Conservatives desire a smaller government, not for its own sake, but for the sake of human flourishing. But the Washington establishment doesn't want a constitutionally limited government because it means they lose power and are held more accountable by the people who put them in power. Like restoring popular sovereignty, the task of reattaching the federal government's constitutional and democratic tethers calls to mind Ronald Reagan's observation that there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. In the case of making the federal government smaller, more effective, and accountable, the simple answer is the Constitution itself. The surest proof of this is how strenuously and creatively generations of progressives and many Republican insiders have worked to cut themselves free from the strictures of the 1789 Constitution and subsequent amendments. Consider the federal budget. Under current law, Congress is required to pass a budget and 12 issue-specific spending bills comporting with it every single year. The last time Congress did so was in 1996. Congress no longer meaningfully budgets, authorizes, or categorizes spending. Instead, party leaders negotiate one multi-trillion-dollar spending bill, several thousand pages long, and then vote on it before anyone literally has had a chance to read it. Debate time is restricted, amendments are prohibited, and all of this is backed up against a midnight deadline when the previous omnibus spending bill will run out and the federal government shuts down. This process is not designed to empower 330 million American citizens and their elected representatives, but rather to empower the party elites secretly negotiating without any public scrutiny or insight. In the end, congressional leaders' behavior and incentives are no different from those of global elites insulating policy decisions over the climate, trade, public health, you name it, from the sovereignty of national electorates. Public scrutiny and democratic accountability make life harder for policymakers, so they skirt it. It's not dysfunction, it's corruption. And despite its gaudy price tag, the federal budget is not even close to the worst example of this corruption. That distinction belongs to the administrative state, the dismantling of which must be a top priority for the next conservative president. The term administrative state refers to the policy-making work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal government's departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. That is, federal law is enacted only by elected legislators in both houses of Congress. This exclusive authority was part of the framers' doctrine of separated powers. They not only split the federal government's legislative, executive, and judicial powers into different branches, they also gave each branch checks over the others. Under our Constitution, the legislative branch, Congress, is far and away the most powerful and correspondingly the most accountable to the people. In recent decades, members of the House and Senate discovered that if they give away that power to the Article 2 branch of government, they can also deny responsibility for its actions. So today in Washington, most policy is no longer set by Congress at all, but by the administrative state. Given the choice between being powerful but vulnerable or irrelevant but famous, most members of Congress have chosen the latter. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected, but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's screaming cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. Bullet 1, a combination of elected and unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency quietly strangles domestic energy production through difficult to understand rulemaking processes. Bullet 2. Bureaucrats at the Department of Homeland Security, following the lead of a feckless administration, order border and immigration enforcement agencies to help migrants criminally enter our country with impunity. Bullet 3. Bureaucrats at the Department of Education inject racist, anti-American, ahistorical propaganda into America's classrooms. Bullet 4. Democrats at the Department of Justice force school districts to undermine girls' sports and parents' rights to satisfy transgender extremists. Bullet 5. Woke bureaucrats at the Pentagon force troops to attend training seminars about white privilege. And the final bullet, and bullet 6, bureaucrats at the State Department infuse U.S. foreign aid programs with woke extremism about intersectionality and abortion. Unaccountable federal spending is the secret lifeblood of the Great Awakening. Nearly every power center held by the left is funded or supported in one way or another through the bureaucracy by Congress. Colleges and school districts are funded by tax dollars. The administrative state holds 100% of its power at the suffragance of Congress, and its insulation from presidential discipline is an unconstitutional fairy tale spun by the Washington establishment to protect its turf. Members of Congress shield themselves from constitutional accountability, often when the White House allows them to get away with it. Cultural institutions like public libraries and public health agencies are only as independent from public accountability as elected officials and voters permit. Let's be clear. The most egregious regulations promulgated by the current administration come from one place, the Oval Office. The president cannot hide behind the agencies. As his many executive orders make clear, his is the responsibility for the regulations that threaten American communities, schools, and families. A conservative president must move swiftly to do away with these vast abuses of presidential power and remove the career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. Properly considered, restoring fiscal limits and constitutional accountability to the federal government is a continuation of restoring national sovereignty to the American people. In foreign affairs, global strategy, federal budgeting, and policymaking, the same pattern emerges again and again. Ruling elites slash and tear at restrictions and accountability placed on them. They centralize power up and away from the American people to supranational treaties and organizations, to left-wing experts, to sight unseen all or nothing legislating, to the unelected career bureaucrats of the administrative state. As monolithic as the left's institutional power appears to be, it originates with appropriations from Congress and is made complete by a feckless president. A conservative president must look to the legislative branch for decisive action. The administrative state is not going anywhere until Congress acts to retrieve its own power from bureaucrats and the White House. But in the meantime, There are many executive tools a courageous, conservative president can use to handcuff the bureaucracy, push Congress to return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington to the American people, bring the administrative state to heel, and in the process, defang and defund the woke culture warriors who have infiltrated every last institution in America. The conservative promise lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. Finally, the president can restore public confidence and accountability to our most important government function of all, national defense. The American people desire a military full of highly skilled servicemen and women who can protect the homeland and our interest overseas. The next conservative president must end the left's social experimentation with the military, restore war fighting as its sole mission, and set defeating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as its highest priority. The next conservative president must possess the courage to relentlessly put the interest of the everyday American over the desires of the ruling elite. Their outrage cannot be prevented. It must simply be ignored. And it can be. The left derives its power from the institutions they control. But those institutions are only powerful to the extent that the constitutional officers surrender their own legitimate authority to them. A president who refuses to do so and uses his or her office to reimpose constitutional authority over federal policymaking can begin to correct decades of corruption and remove thousands of bureaucrats from the positions of public trust they have so long abused. Now, we are going to stop right there. That was Promise 1 and Promise 2. I hope you will plan to join me for our next session as we lean in and read Promise 3 and Promise 4. As always, my people are destroyed due to a lack of knowledge. So today and every day, this is Toni Land saying, get some knowledge.